Hey everyone, thanks for joining me up on Play Games. My name is Lance, and today I'm teaching you how to play Streets of Steel. This is a new game from Wild Power Games. It is a 1 to 4 player game that takes roughly 30 to 60 minutes to play and is a fully cooperative game, so all the players are working together to defeat the game itself. Please make sure that you have your Klingon text turned on, and if you do, you should have a little sample text at the bottom of the screen. This way I can update you with any rules, corrections, or anything else that I need to correct after the video is produced. If you find these videos helpful, if you like what I do, please consider that like button, subscribing to my channel, as it really does make a big difference, helps me to continue to grow and produce these videos. And if you want to stay up to date on all my videos, also considering that bell so you get notifications anytime I release new content. So let's head to the table, and I'll teach you guys how to play. There are 3 different sets of dice included with Streets of Steel. The first set are the yellow punch dice, and these are going to have 4 sides with a single punch symbol and 2 sides with a blank. Then there are the purple kick dice. You'll have 2 sides with 2 kicks, 1 side with 1 kick, and 3 sides with blanks. Finally, you have the 2 damage dice, and you'll have 1 side with 2 successes, 2 sides with 1 success, and 3 sides with a blank symbol on them. The first deck of cards I'm going to look at are the baddie behavior cards, and each of these cards is going to have a name of the card at the top, the type of baddie it's going to activate, the instructions for those baddies, and then some of the cards are going to have the redraw icon, which means that if this type of baddie is not out on the board anywhere, then you'll draw another baddie behavior card and resolve that one. And then finally, some of the cards will also have a tiebreaker that will help the players, and I will explain this more during that step. Other cards are simply going to have instructions the players will follow and will not have the other icons on them. On the back of each of the baddie behavior cards is going to be a hazardous icon with a number in it, and as you can see, they're going to range from 0 all the way up to 2. Anytime a hero moves into a space that is hazardous, they're going to roll the danger die, and if they roll a hit, then they're going to consult the top card of the baddie behavior deck and take that much damage on it. Each time the baddie behavior deck is shuffled up, you're also going to add one of the event cards, and these will all have a name of the event, the instructions for that event with a diagram of how to resolve it, and then any other effects. And each time a event card is resolved, it will be removed from play and will not be re-added into the baddie deck. And so when you have to reshuffle it, you'll draw a new event to place in there randomly. When the heroes reach the last space, they're going to switch out the baddie behavior deck for the boss behavior deck, and this is going to work the same way as the baddie behavior deck with the name of the card at the top, the boss that it'll activate, the boss's effect, and then also a baddie effect, and then some of the cards will have the tiebreaker conditions on them. Each of the cards on the back, again, will have those hazardous icons on them, so if a hero moves into a hazardous space, again, they'll roll that danger die and apply the effects to it. And the final deck of cards are the item cards, and each of these will have an image of the item, the name of the item, and then their effects. And there are going to be 2 different types of items included in the item deck. There's going to be immediate items that when you draw from the deck, if it has an immediate, you'll resolve it immediately. And then there'll be discard items, which means that you can hold on to those items until you choose to use them for their effect. And at that point, then you'll discard them to the discard pile. Moving over to the hero boards, each hero's board is going to list the name of that hero, and then there's stats underneath that, which is the number of hit points that hero has, the maximum number of wild power tokens that hero can collect, the number of spaces the hero can move each time they perform a move action, and then the dice that they're going to roll when attacking. So with Average Joe, he's going to roll 2 yellow punch dice and 2 purple kick dice. Underneath that is going to be the hero's super attacks, and there's going to be 2 different options for this. Each one of these is going to have a name, the number of wild power tokens that hero must spend to perform this attack, and then the effects of the attack that will be resolved once he spends those wild power tokens. And again, each hero has 2 different options. The heroes have to have some enemies to fight, so there will be baddies and a boss included as well. Each of the baddies' boards is going to have a name of the baddie on the top, and then some flavor text about that baddie type, an image on the side, and their stats at the bottom. The first one is the threat level of that baddie, and there's going to be levels 1, 2, and 3. Then the baddie's backstab ability, which each time a hero moves out of a space with a baddie, they're going to have to roll that die that's listed there. So with the punch, they'll roll the danger die, and then take that number of wounds that's rolled on the die. And they can spend wild power to re-roll that. Next is the baddie's defense, which each time a hero attacks him, if they roll equal to or greater than that value, they've defeated that enemy type. And finally, the bounty for that baddie when defeated, so the number of wild power tokens the hero will collect when defeating that baddie type. And bosses work a little bit differently. Each boss is going to have a name and their flavor text again, and then their stats will be the number of hit points that boss has, just like the heroes, their backstab ability, and their defense. But with their defense, each time a hero attacks, they are going to need to roll equal to or greater than that to score 1 damage on that boss. And again, the bounty each time that they wound the boss, the number of wild power tokens they'll collect. And the last thing I want to cover before moving into setup are these street tiles themselves. So each street tile is made up of 6 spaces, which is broken down into 2 columns of 3 spaces. And each space is broken into 2 different lanes. The left lane is going to be your hero lane, and the right lane will be the enemy lane. When these street tiles are put together, they will create 3 rows, and you'll always have 3 tiles out there. So each row is going to be made up of all 3 street tiles, a top, middle, and bottom row. Then these street tiles are going to have a number of different icons on them. First, in the top right-hand corner is the type of street tile it is. So green are going to be your beginning tiles, yellow will be the mid-level tiles, and the red tile will be the boss tile. And then some of the tiles are going to have rough terrain on them, which anytime a hero moves into rough terrain, they must stop their movement action immediately. Hazardous terrain will have you roll the danger die, and if it rolls a hit, you have to consult the top card of the behavior deck and take that number of damage. The box icons will be items that the heroes can collect. Then the threat level icons, which is going to list the number of the threat level enemy that will be spawned in that location when the tile is placed out, and then when certain behavior cards come up. There's a couple of keynotes that I want to point out before moving into setup. So first off, Streets of Steel has multiple core games, so you can combine those and use all of the components interchangeably, but it will add a couple more little details to the setup, which I will cover. If you only have one core game, then the setup is going to be a lot more simple, and I will explain that as well. The other important thing is that in this video I will be using the miniatures, and I want to point out that those are not included with the core game. That is an additional purchase that you must purchase. The core game itself comes with little cardboard cutout standees that look really good as well. So it just depends on your preference if you'd like to add miniatures to the game or not. Either way, it works the same way and it doesn't change the game other than having miniatures. From there, let's go ahead and move on in. So first off, you're going to select the number of heroes based on the number of the players that are playing. So as you can see on this chart, I'm going to set up for a 1-player game. So I'm going to use 3 heroes. So I have Average Joe, Kiki, and Mayor Van Damage. Then you're going to grab the miniatures or standees for those models, and for miniatures you're going to place the different colored tokens on there, and this can be any color the players choose if they have a preference. It doesn't matter on the coloring of the player boards. Next, you're going to select the difficulty of your game. So as you can see again on this chart, based on the difficulty of your game, you're going to collect a number of coins. So I'm just going to go with the medium level, and I will get 4 coins that I'll place off to the side. And each time a hero dies, you'll spend one of those coins to bring the hero back in, and if you run out, then the players have lost. And I'll cover this more a little bit later. This next step is going to be more for players that have multiple core sets, as each core set is going to come with baddies of each of the threshold levels, or threat levels 1, 2, and 3. So with that situation, you're going to select 1 baddie for each one of the threat levels, so 1, 2, and 3, and then 1 boss. If you only have 1 core game, then you'll simply just place out the tiles for the different baddies, as you only have 1 of each of the options. Next, you're going to create the baddie behavior deck, and this is again going to be dependent on if you're using multiple core games or not. If you're not, if you're only using 1, then you simply will grab the enemy behavior deck and add 1 random event card to it, and then shuffle it up. If you are using multiple core sets, then you're going to want to make sure that only the cards for the enemies that you're including, the baddies you're including, are included in this threat deck, and any other cards are discarded back to the box. From there, then the event cards that you don't use, that you have not selected, you can place those off to the side, as every time you have to shuffle up the behavior deck, you'll add a new event card in there, and anytime an event card is revealed from the event or from the behavior deck, it'll be discarded and it will not be included in there. So you'll only ever have 1 event card in the event deck at any time. You can also place out the item deck, and if you want to, you can place out the boss behavior deck, or you can keep it off to the side for the time being, as you won't use this until the boss is revealed. Next, you go ahead and grab all of the different street tiles, and again, this is going to be dependent on if you're using multiple core sets or not. You're going to select one, or randomly select one of the red tiles and place it face down first. Then you can gather up all of the different yellow tiles you have, shuffle those up, and randomly choose 4 of them. Or again, if you're only using one core set, just select one and place it off to the side. The other 4 you can stack on top of the red. And then finally with the green tiles, again, you're going to shuffle those up and randomly select 3 of them, or again, with one core set, just simply remove one of those and place those on top of the yellow. The other ones can be returned to the box as you will not use those for this game. From there, then, with these tiles, you're going to draw the first 3, keeping them in order and placing them out from left to right. Once you have that out, then you can place out any of the tokens that you're going to need for the board and any of the enemies based on the threat levels that they're out on the board. So I will place out one of the box tokens, and then we're going to need a number of enemies. So I'm going to go ahead and place all those out. And again, they will go in the enemy lane on the board. And this is going to be based on the enemy type that you have out. So level 1 threat is going to be the punks. So I'm placing those out first. Any additional enemies that you have can be placed on the top of the board within reach of the player, so they can add those at later points. Any remaining tokens you can place out above the board, as you may use those at later points in the game. And then for this video, I'm also going to be using a Crystal Fortress pod set. If you want to know more about those, I'll have a link in the description below to their website. Now with the heroes, the rulebook does say to give each hero a number of hit points based on their board. Alternatively, I just usually add hit points as heroes take them, but it's totally up to the players on their preference. Other than that, each hero will start with 1 wild power token. So I'll give those to the players and then put this off to the side. You can also place out all of the dice you're going to be using for the game. And then finally, you're going to select one player to be the starting player. So I will have Average Joe be the starting player, and then each player is going to choose a space that they want to start in. And all the players can start in one space. Each space has a maximum of 3 models in it, though, including enemies. So a space, again, is a hero lane and an enemy lane. So this space can only have 2 heroes, as we already have 1 enemy in it. So I'm going to go ahead and place Kiki there. I'll put Mayor up top here, and Average Joe up here. At this point, we're ready to begin the game. Streets of Steel is played over an undefined number of rounds, and during each round, each player will get to activate, starting with the first player and proceeding in a clockwise manner. During each player's turn, it is broken down into 2 steps, the hero activation and then a baddie activation. When all of the heroes have activated for the round, then you'll enter into a street phase, resolving the effects of that. This is going to continue until one of the endgame conditions is met, which is either the players are going to win by defeating the boss baddie that is selected for the scenario they're playing, or the players are going to lose when all of the heroes are dead and there are no quarters remaining. Moving into the game now, we'll start with the player that has the first player marker, and then from there proceed around the table. And during a player's turn, again, it's broken down into 2 steps, the hero activation and then a baddie activation. So starting with the hero activation, during this part of the player's turn, they get to perform 3 actions. And they have 4 different options they can choose from. They can move, attack, taunt, or do a super attack. And they can activate each one of these multiple times depending upon what action it is. And I'm going to take you through each one of these in more detail. The first action I'm going to look at is a move action, and each time a hero performs a move action, they can move a number of spaces equal to their speed value. So with Average Joe, he can move up to 2 spaces with his speed value. Now, you cannot interrupt a movement to perform another action, and all movement is done only with orthogonal spaces, so adjacent spaces, no diagonal movement is allowed. The other important note that I want to make with this, and this only happens at the beginning of the game, and when a character returns to play after spending a quarter. For the very first action that hero performs during, again, this first turn, and anytime they come back in, they have invincibility, which means they're immune to rough terrain, hazards, and backstabbing attacks, which I'm going to cover in just a minute. So with that being said, let me show you an example of this. With Average Joe, he can move in up to 2 spaces. So again, he'll move from his lane to a new lane, a hero lane on another space. and then he can finish off his move there, as that is the first space, and this would be the second space. Alternatively, he could have moved into this space here as his second move. He could have moved forward and then over. Again, you cannot move diagonally, so he could not have just moved into this space, or from here he could not move into here. The other important note is that if a space contains 3 models, which is both the heroes and the enemies, no other model can move into it. So if it was Kiki's turn, she could not move into this space, as it is considered full and she is not allowed to do that. And that applies to enemies as well. They cannot enter a space that has 3 figures in it. So the other important thing with movement is the other effects you're going to run into. The first one is the rough terrain, and these are going to look like little busted up pieces of cement, and there'll be other effects as well that are going to count as rough terrain. Now, anytime you move into a space that has rough terrain, then you have to stop your movement immediately. Even if you have additional movement points to spend, you have to stop. Now, you can spend another action to move from there. So, for example, if Average Joe was here to start off his action and he chose to move, he would have 2 spaces, but as soon as he moved into the rough terrain, he has to end his movement action and he won't be able to spend that second point. Now at this point, he could spend his second action to move again. Other types of terrain you're going to run into are the hazards, so let me put this out real quick. Anytime you move into a hazardous piece of terrain, you're going to roll one of the danger die, and unless you roll a blank, so let's say that he rolls a hit, then he'll consult the top card of the behavior deck and take that number of wounds. Now again, just like anything else, you can spend power tokens to reroll these danger dice to try to get a better result. And the last type of terrain are the boxes. So anytime you move into a space that contains a box token, you can take an item from the item deck and then remove that box. Now you don't have to do this. You can leave this for another hero per se, and it will also not interrupt your movement. So if Average Joe was here, his first action, he could move into here. He could choose to collect that, and then he could continue moving over to this space if he wanted to, and then he could also collect that, but then he would also have to resolve the hazard. And then the last effect with moving is backstabbing. So anytime you move out of a space that contains enemies, each enemy that you're in a space with has the opportunity to backstab you. So with that, you'll reference their board, and as you can see here, the punks have the danger die as their backstab die. So if Average Joe moves out of this space, then for each punk that's in there, he would roll a danger die, and again, take that number of wounds. And again, you can spend power tokens to re-roll each die that it's rolled as well. And this happens for each enemy. So if he was in a space with multiple enemies, you would resolve each one of those individually and then continue his turn. And this isn't going to affect his movement, so unless he's killed, of course, he could move out of this space, suffering that backstab, and then move into this space and end his movement action there. The second option our hero has is to perform an attack action. In order to do this, the player will select one of the enemies that is in the same space as them, and then they will gather up the hero's dice. So as you can see on Average Joe's board, he's going to receive 2 punch and 2 kick dice. And you will always roll all the dice that are listed on your hero's board. From there, I'm going to go ahead and roll, and you'll total up the number of successes and compare them to the enemy's defense. If your total equals or beats the enemy, then you have defeated them and they are removed from the board. But let me say, for example, that I only rolled 1 success on this, so I have not beaten the enemy. I can choose to spend a power token to re-roll one of these dice, and I can do this any number of times as long as I have power tokens. So let me go ahead and spend that, and I'll go ahead and re-roll this other kick die. And I got a second success. So at this point, my successes equal the enemy's defense, so he has been defeated, I'll remove him. And then as you can see on the enemy's bounty, the punk will give the player 1 power token in return. The third option our player has is the taunt action, and with this action, this will allow the player to gain a power token, adding it to their board. And they can again do this any number of times up to their 3 actions. So a player could do this 3 times and gain 3 power tokens during their turn. And the last type of option our player has is to perform a super attack. In order to do this, they'll select one of their super attacks and spend an action, and then they're going to spend the number of resources that are listed on it in power tokens. So with Average Joe, if I select this first action here, nothing special. I have to discard 4 power tokens in order to activate it, returning those to the general supply. and then I'll follow the directions on that attack. So with this one, it says that I'm going to deal 2 punch and 1 kick to each baddie in this row. Do not collect power tokens for defeated enemies or defeated baddies. So with this, I would attack each of the enemies in the row, rolling the dice for each enemy that I attack. So starting with that first guy, I have enough to defeat him, so he would be eliminated. Then the next guy, I do 2, so I defeat him. The third guy is a little bit higher defense with 3, so I don't defeat him. And then the last one, I have enough to defeat him. So I would have eliminated 3 enemies as I have to attack each enemy in the row that I'm in. Once a hero has completed their 3 actions or chooses not to use any actions they have remaining, then the hero's activation is done and the player will move into the second step of their turn, which is the baddie activation. During this step, the first part of it is that the player is going to reveal the top baddie behavior card and resolve its effects. So let me show you how this works. So the top card is the Master Kick, which is a Killigaroo action. So with this one, we would activate any Killigaroos that are out there and resolve their effects as listed on the card. And then this card has a redraw. So since there aren't any Killigaroos out there, then there's nothing we can do. And then the redraw comes into play where we will draw the next card and resolve its effects. And this is going to continue until you find either a card that does not have the redraw or you resolve the effects of the card with a baddie out there. So with this one, for example, this is for punks, and we do have punks on the board. So when we're done with this card, even if we don't activate any punks, this will end the redraw and we would not add another redraw to it. So with this one, it says that the punks are going to move 3 spaces towards the nearest hero and then attack with 1 yellow punch die. And then we have the tiebreaker or our targeting priority for the punks as well. So with this, each of the punks is going to activate. So we're going to start, and as you can see on this chart, we start at the top, working our way down, and then moving up and continuing along this pattern until all of the enemies have activated for this card. Each time an enemy activates, they're going to move and follow those directions, and they're always going to move vertically first before moving horizontally. So with our first punk, he's already in the space with a hero, and so he is not going to move, and he will simply roll his die. And again, it's going to go on priority since there's 2 heroes in there. So our blue hero is going to be targeted before the red hero. So the mayor is going to take the hit, and we'd roll. And it is a hit, so our mayor would take a damage unless he wants to spend a power token to reroll that. He is not, so I'm going to add a damage to his board. Then our next enemy is going to go. So with this guy, he would move forward 1, but he cannot move forward again because this space is full. So the enemy will stop in the space before the space that's full. So our enemy would stop here. And each time an enemy activates, we're going to move him forward into the hero's column to represent that we've activated that enemy. So now this enemy will move into the hero's space, and we would continue on down, working our way through. Then this enemy would go next. So he would move vertically first, and rough terrain and hazardous terrain does not affect enemies. Then he's going to move forward 2 more spaces, and that'll finish off his activation. Continuing on, then we have this enemy here, so he's going to move 1, 2, 3, and move forward. And that is it for the punks. So then the second step in this process is to move all of the enemies back into their enemy lane. Once that is done, then it'll move in clockwise order to the next hero, unless all of the heroes have activated for this round. Now that I've taken you through the process of a player's turn, let me take you through a full example to show you all this in action. So again, I'm going to start with Average Joe's turn, and so he's going to start off by doing his actions. So the other important thing, which I haven't gotten to yet, which will be the next step, is to point out that the end tile at the end of the round, after all the heroes have gone, is going to drop off. So any hero on a tile that drops off is going to die. So it's very important for our heroes not to be on the last tile. And because this is the beginning of the game, and this is my very first action, my hero is invincible. So I'm going to take full advantage of that. And again, this is only for the very first action. So I'm going to go ahead and do my move first. So I'm going to move up to 2 spaces. And again, the invincibility negates the backstab, otherwise I would have had to take care of that. So that's my first action, moving 2 spaces. And then for my second action, I am going to attack that enemy in front of me. So I'm going to get my 4 attack dice, giving them a roll. and I have more than enough successes to kill that enemy. So with that, I would defeat him, removing him from the board, and then I will receive a bounty of a wild power token for that. And that's my second action. So then my third action, I'm going to go ahead and move again. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward one more. Well, actually, I'm going to stop there. And for my third action, I'll go ahead and taunt, gaining another power token, as that could come in handy a little bit later. So at that point, then my hero's activation is done, and I'll move into the enemy's activation, drawing a card. So this is From the Smoke, Firebug. Add one Firebug to the center row of the rightmost column. So with this, I would add a Firebug there, but I am out of Firebug miniatures, which means that I would not have to add one. And with this card not having a redraw, then nothing happens, and my heroes have lucked out for this particular enemy activation phase. So from here, then it would move on to the next player in clockwise order, which is the mayor to go. Once all of the heroes have completed their activation, with each hero being able to take their turn, then you'll move into the last step of the round, which is the street phase. During this phase, the leftmost tile is going to fall away, being removed. Any enemies that are on there will be eliminated and added back to the general supply. Any heroes that are on there are going to die and will be put back on their cards, and any tokens on there are removed, and then this tile is discarded off the board. The remaining tiles are going to slide over, and a new tile will come out. When adding a new tile, you'll go ahead and add any tokens that are required, such as the item tokens, and then we'll go ahead and spawn new enemies on there based on the threat levels that are listed again. So we have a couple of punks, and we have two of the pyro, or the firebugs, but we are out of firebugs at this point, so the last space would not be filled. And then the final step in this is that the first player token will be passed counterclockwise to the next player. So Kiki would become the first player for the next round. And then you would continue on with her turn, starting a new round. Now, the one other important thing with this is that this is going to continue until the last tile comes out. So at this point, let's say that we were adding this very last tile, which is the boss's tile. So at this point, again, everything remains the same as far as new enemies will come out in the locations, and the boss is going to be added to his space. But from this round on, the first player token is not going to be passed. So if it was Kiki with the first player token, she would not pass it to the next player. It would continue being hers, and new tiles would not fall off as there are no new tiles to come out. And this is going to stay this way until either the boss is eliminated or all the heroes are killed. And the one other important note, when the boss comes out, you're going to remove the baddie behavior deck from the game and use the boss behavior deck at this point going forward. Anytime the boss behavior deck runs out, then you'll shuffle up the discard pile and create a new deck. And the boss behavior deck works exactly the same way as the enemy behavior decks. Again, like I had talked about earlier, the top effect will affect the boss in play, and the bottom effect are going to affect certain types of baddies which are listed on the card. There are two other things that I'd like to cover real quick. So the first thing is with items. So any item that you can discard to add dice to an attack roll must be discarded before the attack roll. You cannot choose to discard an item after the attack roll to add those additional dice and hopefully be successful. You must choose to do so beforehand. The second thing is with hero death. So anytime a hero takes a number of hit points equal to their health stat, then they have died. Their miniature will be removed from the board and added back over to their player board. Any items that they have are going to be discarded and returned to the supply. Any power tokens they have will be eliminated, and any other effects or conditions on them will be removed as well. During that hero's next activation, so the next time it comes around to their turn, if there are any coins left in the reserve, the player can discard one of those coins and bring their hero back out, starting in one of the leftmost spaces on the board. And again, that hero is going to have invincibility for that very first action, and only that very first action during their turn. If a hero dies and there are no coins left in reserve, then that hero is permanently dead and his board is going to be flipped over to his deceased side. And if all of the players have been eliminated, then the game is over and the players have lost. Otherwise, if the players are able to defeat the boss before all of the heroes have been eliminated, then the players have won the game. Well, I hope you found this video helpful. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those in the comment section below and I'll do my best to answer them. And thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video and leave me feedback on that. I do really appreciate it and take into account everything you guys say to make the best possible videos. If you found this video helpful, if you like what I do, please consider hitting that like button, subscribing to my channel, as it really does make a big difference, helps me to continue to grow and produce these videos. And until next time, I'll see you guys later.